Ladies and gentlemen, a conversation with Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos and the Honorable Alex Acosta, interviewed by the Heritage Foundation's Kay Coles James.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention a moment, please, before we get started, I'd like to ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of and in memory of the students and the teachers and all of the families impacted in Parkland, Florida. If you will please join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Well, that was a very sobering way to start a very important panel, and I want to thank you for that and for your thoughtfulness. Before we get started, I just wanted to let the audience know why I am so extraordinarily honored to be here. And if you hadn't noticed, we already did Secretary Acosta. You got that? Remember that? Okay. I have known you, we tried to figure it out, probably 25, maybe even 30 years. I was in junior high at the time. No, I was.
And grade school.
And one of the things that I know about our secretary, this is our Secretary of Education, is that she is an incredible woman, one that I have admired and loved and respected for so many years. And from the very minute I knew her, what is at the heart and soul of this woman is to provide equal educational opportunities for the kids in this country. That is the very essence of who she is. And we want to thank you.
Thank you, Kay.
Join me in thanking her.
Thank you. Thanks.
Let me start off with a softball. Knowing who you are, knowing your passion, knowing your commitment, knowing everything about you, there are many things you could be doing with your life right now. Why did you decide to do this?
Well, thank you, Kay. Let me first begin by thanking you for your very kind words. And let me remind you that there are many other things you could be doing with your life right now. And so, you know, I think we both are in the places that we are for a time like this. We have opportunity to help make change and bring greater opportunity. Yes. In my case, I have been an advocate for all kids for over 30 years for the opportunity to have a great future and a great education, but an equal opportunity for all children. And that has fueled my passion for many, many years, and it's even a greater passion now.
Well, one of the things that I'm fond of saying is that some people have school choice, the wealthy, the connected, and the elected. They have it. What are you doing at the department right now to assure that all students have that opportunity?
Well, we are first of all carrying out the duties of the department, and right now in K-12 world, that includes the implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act, which I think if states take the opportunities afforded them through the act will bring many more opportunities and much more flexibility for schools to meet students' needs and to address the needs of individual students. In complement to that, I continue to advocate, most education policy happens at the state level, And many states have taken significant steps to offer parents and empower parents with more choices for their children's education. I'm urging and encouraging states to even double down on that, and for those who've not yet taken those steps to do so. We have an opportunity also from the federal level to partner with states in that regard. And there will be more on that coming in the coming months. But there's also opportunities at the federal level to look at areas where the federal government is directly involved, and I think specifically around military-connected families. And I know for a fact that there are more than a third of military families, active duty military families that have school-age children. Their decisions about where they go or where they don't go or whether they continue to serve hinge very heavily on the opportunities they have for their children's education. And so I think we have an opportunity in that regard to empower them with some more of those choices.
Well, I know that educational disparities are something that's very important to you, and we see it everywhere from K through 12 and college. Could you talk for a little bit about some of the policies in the past that got us to this point? How did we get here?
Well, there have been a lot of policies that have siloed education into specific areas, and you look at the fact that we have block grant programs that afford low-income families the opportunity to choose a preschool for their child, and we have Pell Grants and GI Bills that afford students to choose places at the higher education level. And yet, when we get to K-12 world, those things are not ubiquitous in K-12 education. And so I believe there's a very strong argument to be made that all families should have the same kind of power and the same kind of choices and the same kind of opportunities that I had for my children, and that many of us in this room have and have had, and that we should empower them to make those choices through various mechanisms and various means, but make sure that your child's quality of education is not going to be based on where you're living or your family income.
You know, I've heard it said that some of our elected officials are the ones that live in public housing and send their kids to private school. They live in governor's mansions and sometimes in the White House, and they have school choice, but very often poor families don't. Yeah. So very often we hear when we talk about vouchers, they talk almost exclusively in terms of to send your kids to private school. But is that really the full definition? What else should we take into consideration?
Well, when we talk about school choice, most often people go to a voucher, which is simply a mechanism. There are many mechanisms to give parents and students opportunity to choose. So there are tax credit scholarships, education savings accounts, there are virtual schools, there are blended learning schools opportunities, there are charter public schools, and there's probably some methodologies not even yet discovered. But those are all just mechanisms. I think the core issue is that we need to really embrace, as a country, education freedom. And that allows us to think more broadly about what education should be. The opportunity to learn in different ways. We all know that, I have 4 grown children. They are all very different individuals, and they learned differently. And anybody who has more than one child knows that kids are different. And so we need to look at a system that for too long has forced kids into more of a one-size-fits-all approach, and create environments where new creative approaches are able to come in and be tried and afford families different options and different places for their children to learn as they can best do.
You know, we always want to support our military. And you know, this audience here is strong in support of our military. And one of the things we've been working on at the Heritage Foundation is education savings account for military dependents. Can you talk about that a little bit and explain to our audience first what it is and how it would help?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, there are so many active duty families today who are making decisions about how they advance within the military or where they're going to live or not live based on opportunities and education opportunities for their children. I think we have an opportunity to change that dynamic for them and allow them the chance to tap into education savings accounts, which would allow them to take the funding that would go for their child's education at whatever the assigned school is and use it to customize their kids' education. So maybe they take a couple of classes at the local traditional school to which they're assigned. Maybe they take a couple of online classes. Maybe they take another couple of classes at a charter school or some other combination that will work for that child. But to afford these families that kind of flexibility to meet their students' needs where they are and where they're moving. You know, we know that they're so mobile generally that it is difficult for those kids moving from base to base to base or from city to city to city to have continuity in their education. An education savings account would afford them a much different dynamic and approach to be able to get their education in the way that best works for them. And if they don't use it all up in 1 year, it can roll forward in that savings account to be used for future years.
Wow. I think our military families deserve that. What do you think?
Well, we know it's a popular idea with them at over 70% of them supporting that notion.
Wow. And we support it for them. Okay, freedom of choice in education is vital, but so is freedom of expression. Some of us are so concerned about what we're seeing in some of our public schools and some of our higher ed institutions in terms of particularly conservatives having their freedom of expression curtailed. What is the administration doing about that?
Well, this is a very timely and serious issue that I think that we have got to address from a multitude of angles. And I think we have seen more and more examples on college campuses in recent years of shutting down free and open expression and debate around ideas. You know, my view of and my experience of going to college was it was a place where I could test out some of the things that I was taught as I was raised. I could entertain new thoughts and ideas, and it is and should be a place where we explore other opinions and ideas, and yet today it has become more and more a place where those opinions or where that possibility is more and more controlled. We have got to continue to exercise a very foundational part of our nation's founding in the First Amendment. And this administration is committed to upholding those freedoms of expression and exchange of ideas, and we will be continuing to advance this notion that the place to have fights, so to speak, is in the battle of ideas, and let's talk about them and let's share our perspectives, but do so in a way that is open to alternative views and others' perspectives without censorship and without fear of being able to, of not being able to defend them. Good ideas are always going to win.
We know that, don't we? You know, it never ceases to amaze me that the left has a part of their mantra, you know, diversity, and they want diversity in every area except for in the area of opinions and ideas.
Yeah.
And I think they're mostly afraid of the fact that they know our ideas are better. How many college students do we have out here right now? A lot. We know that you are doing a lot at the Department of Education. Can you explain to some of our audience out here, what exactly are you focusing on in the department for college students?
Well, of course, higher education is a really important part of the role of the Department of Education, support for higher education. But I've said it often before, and I'll say it again here. I think for too many decades, we've had a almost singular focus on the notion that in order to be successful in adulthood, you need to go to a four-year college, go to and graduate from a four-year college or university, when in fact today we know that there are a multitude of pathways that students can take, and there are many opportunities beyond high school for further education and a good, meaningful and job with a future beyond, opportunities to continue education beyond if you so desire. And this administration is, and the president has been very eloquent on this multiple times, we have got to focus on the fact and help students understand from a much earlier age what some of these other pathways and opportunities are. And you heard from Secretary Acosta earlier. He chairs a task force that I'm also serving on that is focused on elevating and increasing the opportunities around apprenticeship. I think this is a really important avenue and needs to be celebrated and honored, and all of those opportunities really need to be respected and encouraged, that students can pursue a wide range of options beyond a four-year college or university. And I think that we will see more and more as this administration partners with industry and local business to meet the needs, the growing needs that they have. 6 million jobs that are going unfilled today that require further education beyond high school, but are going unfilled because there's a mismatch in skills.
Let me tell you something about your Secretary of Education. One of my favorite descriptions of Maggie Thatcher is that she was an iron fist and a velvet glove. And that's how I see this lady right here. We know how difficult it is every day in that job. We are appreciative to the president for picking the best people possible to serve in his cabinet. And we know that every day you get up and you come to work and you do a fabulous job for the American people. But are we winning?
Absolutely, we're winning. Absolutely. You know, this whole notion of education freedom, I think is one that people, no matter where you come from, can relate to and embrace. For 150 years in the K-12 world, we've relied primarily on a system that has treated education as more like a factory or an industrial approach. And it's time now to ask the questions that we have not been really wanting to ask for too many years. And we have an opportunity to think much more holistically about learning, what the role of education is. Starting from the youngest of ages, where we know that young children absorb the world around them at such a tremendous rate, and then launching them into their formative years in the K-12 world, where if every parent and every child had the opportunity to choose a school or a learning environment that worked for that child, and if finding after a year that that particular school wasn't the right fit, to be able to make another choice, we would see a dynamism in education that we have not seen in over 100 years. And that the demand for this continues to grow, with no matter what party or demographic group you look at this from, this perspective from, the support for education freedom and choice in education is broad and wide. And so I encourage everyone in this room to raise your voices around this very important subject. Education and the children and the students that are served through education represent 100% of our future. And we have got to invest in our future and do so in a way that is going to encourage the creativity and the entrepreneurial activity and the thinking that is going to move our country forward, the likes of which we have not seen before. So everyone here who is has an interest in our nation's future, I think it's critically important that you raise your voices in support of empowering students and empowering parents with the multitude of choices and pathways to a future that is right for him or her. And I am so thankful for the opportunity to be here with you all and to serve you in this capacity. And I look forward to working together, shoulder to shoulder with you, to advance our nation's future through the education of today's young people.
Oh. Secretary DeVos, thank you for your love of and commitment to this country. Thank you for taking on the failure factories that exist in our cities around the country. Thank you for your love of children and your desire to make sure that they have the best education possible. And thank you, President Trump, for bringing us someone as wonderful as Secretary DeVos for such an important job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.